Hello ACVS bid experts. As promised, I'm making this little video to show you how to use this new equipment and estimate form. It's largely based on the stuff that we've already done, and I've added some features based on discussions with Jim and from comments from Philip and other people, and I'm sure I've missed some, so we're gonna need to kind of modify it again based on your input. So here goes nothing. The first sheet here is equipment and labor, and all of the columns are here, but I've developed some different looks that allow you to only have up whatever you need. Like in this case, we're in the equipment section. Let me click that to make sure. And you can see we have a reference number, which is really not that important. Brand, model, color, description, quantity, just like we did before. Where we're making a little bit of a change is I've added this column called type, and the type column allows you to define what type of line item is this. Is this a main unit? Is this an option, an accessory, or a cable, connector, mounting hardware, rack mounts, freight, supplies, consulting, engineering, drafting, project management, and so on, right? Demolition, disposal, training, installation, etc. So in this case, this one is a main unit. So I'll show you later on how to modify these, because this list is really modifiable, and how to get results based on this list as far as breakdowns and reports. The next column is bid option. Bid option is also something that came out, I think Jim was the one who brought it up, to say basically that yes, as we do these bids, right, many a times we have a primary purpose meaning to do the minimum amount required for the bid, but sometimes we have, for example, in this case, a Panasonic projector the bid may be requiring, but we also want to offer an Optima projector instead. So in those cases, when we want to offer different options, we can come in here and classify those as either primary, meaning that that's for the bid and it's a requirement, or B, C, D, E, F, depending on what they are. And you can change these letters to represent something, right? So, and all of this is going to be calculated separately, so that depending on how we use this column in terms of adding options or maybe having alternatives, would be able to see the calculation and actually calculate what that would cost for the customer. The rest of it, MSRP, this is the MSRP for the unit. GP margin is the margin that we'd like to have. I've set it up as a default of 20, but you can change it by line item. And then unit price and extended costs are calculated. And here's where we actually enter the cost for the unit, source, extended profit, and total GP achieved. Important to mention that the MSRP is actually calculated so that if the calculation goes over the MSRP price, the unit price stays at a maximum of MSRP. So that's basically the equipment entry, right? Now, if we go into labor entry, and again, this is all the same sheet, but it's different views. In this particular case, everything remains here as you've known it, but we see field labor hours for each unit and office labor hours for each unit. And field labor and office labor have subdivisions of design, drafting, management, mechanical, construction, wiring, packing and unpacking, programming, testing, and training. Essentially, you enter the amount of hours for each individual section that you think you're going to need, and the sheet auto-calculates the cost for the labor for office and field and what we want to charge based on a chart that I'm going to share with you in a minute. On the side over here, you'll see calculations for total field labor, total office labor, and of course the grand total for both labor types. So the next selection here on the same sheet again is a line summary that allows you to see the same information right here, but on the side you can see the actual totals for product and labor totals in an easy to understand way, while still your extended product information, not including labor, is right here. Lastly, on the same sheet, we have an all details, and all details unhides all the columns and gives you a view of everything, including all the background calculations that are going on. So it's quite lengthy, but again, you never really have to look at this unless you think there's something wrong. So let's go back to the equipment view. So that was the equipment and labor sheet. Now beyond that, we also have a travel and catch-all sheet. On the travel and catch-all sheet, the total field labor hours are being carried over, and then someone has to make a decision how many number of people on site and the number of days. And based on this, hotel, air travel, car rental, and meals per day per person and so on is calculated so we can come up with travel expenses total. As well, down right here below, I've put in charges and services not included elsewhere. We always run into this where we forget stuff that we didn't include somewhere else, or we just don't want to show it on the other sheet. So here's where we would put those miscellaneous charges. On the third sheet is a total summary. And basically in here, we bring in the number for equipment, supplies, cables, and connectors from the equipment area, preparation and installation from the labor area, miscellaneous supplies and labor from the not elsewhere included area, and of course travel. We add it all up, and then we allow the user to add a preferred account discount, and then from there we calculate what the discount would be, how much the customer is saving, and what margin we're making, and so on. Right underneath this, you will see an analysis by charge type. If you remember, we had these different types, main unit or an option or an accessory or whatever have you. All these are actually brought in here, and now you can see what we're charging for by type. As well, remember we had option types, like sometimes we have primary products and other times we want to add some alternatives and so on. This is where those are calculated, and we get a number that we can, depending on what we did, depending on if this was an alternative or if this was an add-on, we can add them together or subtract them from each other or whatever. So this just allows us to provide alternatives to customers as we construct the bid. So that's basically the sheet, the three main sheets. Now there is also a references sheet that allows you to enter the bid number, enter the deadline for submission of questions. I think that's important for engineering to know, so they have a deadline by which they can ask questions, and a bid submission deadline, so we all know what we're working toward. As well, here's where these work types that we talked about for labor, design, drafting, management, mechanical, blah, blah, and so on, right? Cost and the amount of charges that we charge for office and field are provided, and you can change these and they'll auto-calculate, so that these are just numbers I put in out of my head, but we should look at that and make sure that my numbers are average or correct for what we're trying to accomplish. Another point here, the gross profit default for equipment is, I've set it to 20%, but by changing it here, it will change on the main sheets. And lastly, the charges type, main unit, option, accessories, and so on, this list, as well as the bid options list is here and can be changed, can be modified as long as you do it in the beginning when you first start the sheet. The bid options, we can say primary, alternative, or alternative 2, alternative 3, or whatever have you, and that will also carry over into the other sheets. So I think all in all, this is basically very similar to what we used to do in the past, so it's not violating any existing rules that we may have, but it is a neater way of doing it It does provide the additional type and bit options in here, so not really a bad thing. We need to use this on an actual bid so we can identify any more shortcomings so we can fix it. One of the shortcomings that cost me a couple of hours this morning, and in the end I decided not to do it, is adding rows. Jim brought that up and he says, well, what if I want to go here and add something about this ceiling mount because it needs these special screws or whatever have you? Well, you can still do it, but in this case it's a manual process. You would select the entire row and say insert one below. Now you've got a row inserted. Unfortunately, the formulas haven't carried. So you would go to a blank part of the worksheet, select the entire row, copy it, go back here and say paste, and the formulas would automatically be added. So the idea here is this is the thing that I was trying to script this morning, but when you try to script this, you run into trouble. So I left it alone. So that's the sheet, guys, and that's how you use it. Please take a look at it. Hopefully use it on a make-believe or a real bid, and let me know what other changes you'd like to see. Thank you very much for your patience and for listening to this video and my accent, and have yourselves a wonderful day. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.